Hello and welcome back to the Air Armoury. I'm JRH and today I'm looking at the Haenel Model 303 air rifle. So I'll show you the rifle up close in a minute and do some shooting, but first just a bit of background about the manufacturer Haenel and the model, the 303. So Haenel have been around for a long time. They're originally founded in 1840 by Carl Gottlieb Haenel, although I have also seen him referred to as Carl Gustav Haenel, and they were based in Suhl in central Germany. And they are still in business today and still based in Suhl, although they're now only making firearms. They're no longer making air guns. And in that long history, the company has changed hands several times, having had periods of being both privately and state-run. So Haenel started manufacturing air guns in 1925, and it was in this interwar period that they made possibly one of their best air guns, the Model 33 military trainer, and that was designed by Hugo Schmeisser, who went on to develop the MP-38 submachine gun, amongst other things. Production ceased during the Second World War, starting again in the late 1940s, although it is now part of the state-run firearms industry of East Germany, or the German Democratic Republic to give them their proper title. And it is these post-war guns that Haenel is best known for in the UK, having been imported in, I think, quite large numbers, initially by Parker Hale and later by John Rothery Wholesale. And one of, if not the most common one you'll come across of these post-war guns is this one, the Model 303. Now it was first released in, I think, 1969, and it was in production for quite a long time. I'm not sure exactly when production stopped, but I believe it was in the early 90s. Given the length of time that the 303 was in production, it's unsurprising that they made a few changes over the years, with each updated version being designated, or at least known by a number suffix, so 3031, 3032, 3, 4, and so on. Although that isn't actually marked on the gun anywhere, and there's very little definitive information out there to identify them, so they're generally just generically all known as the Model 303, and one notable exception being the 303-8 Super, which is a target version, so it has a distinctive target style stock and aperture sights. This particular gun has a couple of features which show it's an early gun, so I'll point those out when I look at the gun up close and in detail, which I'm going to do now. As per usual, let's start off with some basic information about the gun. It's a break barrel spring piston rifle. It's 44 inches or 112 centimeters long and weighs 6.4 pounds or 2.9 kilograms. It has a 19¼ inch or 49 centimeter long rifled barrel, and as far as I'm aware they were only rifled barrels. I'm not aware of any smoothbore versions ever being made. And with regard to calibre, it was available in both 177 and 22, except for the 303-8 Super target version, which was 177 only. Now this particular rifle is in 22, but interestingly it's actually 5.6mm, not 5.5mm. Now 22 and 5.5mm are generally regarded as the imperial metric standards and are therefore seen as interchangeable, and that is what is often marked on guns and pellets. But true imperial 22 is closer to 5.6mm. It's interesting here then that this is a German made rifle and therefore using metric measurements, but it was made to 5.6mm instead of the standard metric 5.5mm. Most of the gun is metal, which is blued steel, but there are a few plastic parts, such as the safety catch at the back and the slider on the rear sight. Now I like the fact that most parts are metal, but lots of bits are cheap stamped parts, which I don't have a problem with per se, but these don't feel particularly high quality. It has these rings in the front of the main cylinder. Now I'm not sure whether they are either just for look or whether they add strength, but you do see them on some other Eastern European guns of this time, such as Slavia rifles. It has a Sporter style hardwood stock. whilst nothing special, it's reasonably nicely shaped and comfortable to hold, although it would benefit from some checkering or some finger grooves cut into the fore end, and it's the stock that actually tells me that this is an earlier gun. So firstly, the nice round shape to the stock. On the later guns this was a lot bulkier and was a lot more squared off on the fore end. Then the gun has a nice metal butt plate at the back. This was later changed to just grooves cut into the wood. And lastly, the stock screws attach from underneath. Later on they were changed to attach via the side. So what I'm going to do now is take the stock off to show you what's going on under there, including the trigger and safety. Looking at the stock itself first, you can see a spring in here with a metal cap on it, and that's in there because the cocking link is in two pieces with a pivot in it. So it needs to run against something in order for it to function properly and not to pivot the wrong way. Now in guns like this it's usually the stock itself, but as there's quite a deep cutout in the stock, presumably to save weight, the cocking link runs against this metal disc on top of the spring. Now the trigger isn't too bad, it feels comfortable enough to shoot, but it is a simple stamped metal blade and it does feel a bit cheap and wobbly, but it is adjustable though. But interestingly, the adjustment is on the trigger guard, not the trigger itself. And the way that works is, if you have a look at the trigger, you can see a cutout with a silver bar inside. Now that silver bar is actually the bottom part of the sear. Then if you look at the trigger guard, you can see on the front here the end of a threaded pin with a nut on it. If I turn the stock over, you can see that that pin goes through the stock and then also goes through the front of the trigger and presses on that sear. So if you loosen this nut and thread the pin in or out, it alters how much the sear is already being pushed in before the trigger's pulled. The Model 303 has a safety at the back here. Now this is an automatic safety, so it engages when you cock the gun, but it can also be manually reset. Now how this works is this safety catch at the back is linked to this metal bar which runs around the trigger with this spring on the end. So when you cock the gun, the cocking link comes back and pushes on this spring, which in turn pushes on this bar, and as well as pushing the safety catch out, that bar slots into that cutout in the trigger, therefore preventing that trigger from being pulled. So to disengage it, push the button in, which pushes the bar forwards, and you can then pull the trigger. In terms of sights, the rear sight is a simple tangent sight that's spot welded onto the barrel, so it's not adjustable for windage, but it is adjustable for elevation using this plastic sliding bar. The front sight is a nice big metal blade, and it has a groove on either side, so I'm assuming it would have had a sight hood when it was new. And unlike the rear sight, the front sight is held in with a dovetail, so it can be adjusted for windage by tapping it to either side. Now the sights themselves and the sight picture isn't fantastic, but they're about what you'd expect from this kind of rifle. And if you don't want to use the open sights, it does have an 11mm dovetail rail for mounting a scope. Looking at the markings, along the top of the main cylinder we have Model 303. Notice the German spelling of model with a double L at the end. And then beside that, or under that, depending on how you're looking at the gun, you can see what looks like a blacksmith with Suhl written underneath it. Now this rifle was made in Suhl, which is a town in central Germany, and Suhl has a long and rich history of firearms manufacture, and this figure here isn't actually a blacksmith, it is Der Waffenschmied, which translates into English as the armourer or the weaponsmith, and it's actually a statue in Suhl's Market Square which was put up in 1903 to commemorate Suhl's weapon making history. And that marking isn't exclusive to Haenel guns, you can also find it on guns by some other Suhl manufacturers at this time, including Baumann, Merkel and Simpson, and that symbol is actually now the logo used by the Sewell Arms Alliance, which is a group of Sewell-based gunsmiths and firearms manufacturers, which was founded in 2006, and includes, amongst others, the modern incarnation of the Haenel company. Then at the bottom of the main cylinder we have Haenel's distinctive arrow logo, followed by Made in GDR. As I said earlier, that's the German Democratic Republic, so East Germany. Then on the left hand side of the barrel we have the serial number, this one being 527,721, but unfortunately I don't have any data on how many were made or what the serial number range for them was. And lastly, on the top of the barrel we have the caliber, cal 5.6mm. So I'm now going to test the accuracy of the rifle, and I'm going to fire 10 of these 16 grain Air Arms Diablo field pellets at one of these 14cm square targets from a distance of around 12 meters. Here I have my target. Now first of all I should say I've not had a lot of trigger time with this gun, so I haven't adjusted the sights yet. Obviously I need to raise them, but what I'm looking for here in terms of accuracy is grouping rather than hitting dead centre. Now the accuracy is acceptable for plinking with open sights, but it's not fantastic. Now these 8 here aren't too bad, but there are only 8 there. One hit low and just nicked the paper here where it hit the target holder, but I don't know where the other shot went. Now I'm now going to test the power by firing another 10 of those Air Arms Diablo field pellets over the chronograph. Here I have my chronograph test sheet, and I've already done all of my calculations. Now with those 16 grain Air Arms Diablo field pellets I got an average velocity of 347.3 feet per second with a spread of just 11.5 feet per second. The highest being 353.3 feet per second and the lowest being 341.8 feet per second, and using that average of 347.3 feet per second that gives me a power of 4.29 foot-pounds. Now the only data I can find on the power of these guns suggests that they were supposed to be between 7.5 and 8.5 foot-pounds, so this rifle is currently slightly underpowered. So there you've seen the Haenel Model 303 air rifle. Now it's quite a cool gun, it's got a couple of interesting features and markings, but it is quite typical of this kind of Eastern European air rifle from the 70s, and if I'm completely honest, I think I want to like it more than I actually do. I've enjoyed getting my hands on one and making a video, but this isn't a gun that's going to be making it into my permanent collection. If however you would like to get one yourselves, they're readily available online, and you can expect to pay maybe around £75 to £100, maybe a bit less if you're lucky. The Target version, the 303-8 Super, is however a bit more expensive as it's rarer. So thanks for watching, be sure to like, comment and subscribe to the Air Armoury, and until next time, keep your arms in the air.